Greetings to all fans of the StarCraft universe. Once again, rereading your comments, I came across one question that interested me very much, since there is really very little information on it. Comrade Gordon Freeman asked, what is the essence? Where did the first spawning pool come from? And what is it anyway? Having made a note in my diary, I put this topic off until better times, because at that time I was busy with the history of the Zerg. And now the time has come. When I started collecting data, I was once again convinced that there is simply no data. All we know about the pool is actually what Zervan told us about it in Heart of the Swarm. That it existed before names, that it contained an essence that split into many, and one devoured another, eventually forming the first Zerg. In connection with the above, this video will be more analytical in nature, so get ready. Sit back, fasten your seatbelts and turn on artificial gravity, so your freshly brewed coffee doesn't leave your favorite cup. Next up, Zeros. Let's go.
4, 3, 2, 1, engage.
First, let's talk about what essence is. From a scientific point of view, it is nothing more than a nucleic acid, biopolymer, that performs the functions of storing, transmitting and implementing hereditary information. This is the basis of life. The Zerg absorbs the essence of other organisms and mutate, improving their species. And what causes mutations in the body? Correct, changes in the genetic structure. As you know, assimilation of other species is accomplished by the Zerg virus. When infected, the Zerg genetic material is introduced into the host organism, and the creature becomes part of the swarm forever. That is, the Zerg essence itself is aggressive and can absorb and rebuild the genome of other species in its own way. The original essence that formed the first Zerg appeared in the first spawning pool. This means that it was the catalyst for life on Zeros, at least that which is associated with the Zerg. If we draw a parallel with scientific research conducted on our home planet, we can establish that on Zeros, as on Earth, there were probably similar conditions of the primordial soup, in which life originated. Even more suggestive of this idea is the fact that the Zerg, like humans, are representatives of a carbon-based life form and have a DNA molecule at their core. As we know, life on Earth originated in the ocean, as water had more favorable conditions for it. Speaking about the ashen world of Zeros, deprived of wide water spaces, the centers of life could have been underground springs and geysers. And at the place where one of these springs came to the surface, the pool could have formed. Continuing the analogy, it should be noted that from the mixture of chemicals present in these water sources, amino acids and nucleotides were randomly formed. From the former, protein compounds subsequently appeared, and from the latter, more complex nucleic acids. The fact that amino acids are formed from a mixture of chemical elements was proven as a result of the Miller-Urey experiment. During the experiment, Stanley Miller simulated the atmospheric conditions of the Earth about 4 billion years ago in test tubes, filling them with a mixture of gases – methane, ammonia, hydrogen and carbon monoxide, adding water and passing an electric current through the test tubes, which was supposed to produce the effect of lightning discharges. As a result, the interaction of the chemicals produced 22 amino acids in the test tubes. What happened next? According to the modern concept of the RNA world, Ribonucleic acid, RNA, was the first molecule to acquire the ability to self-reproduce. The essence of this theory is that the basis of life is recognized as ribonucleic acid molecules, which in the process of self-reproduction could accumulate mutations. These mutations eventually led to the ability of ribonucleic acid to create proteins. Protein compounds are a more effective catalyst than RNA, and this is why the mutations that created them were fixed in the process of natural selection. At the same time, the storage of genetic information, DNA, was formed. That is, DNA is an excellent keeper of genetic information, and proteins are a first-class catalyst. But only RNA can perform both functions, which makes it a universal molecule. Ribonucleic acid have survived as an intermediary between DNA and proteins, performing many different functions, including storing information about the sequence of amino acids in proteins, transferring amino acids to the sites of peptide bond synthesis, and participating in regulating the activity of certain genes.
Adaptation or death. This is the law of survival.
Scientists have also proven the evolution of RNA. The ability of RNA molecules to evolve has been clearly demonstrated in the number of experiments. Even before the discovery of the catalytic activity of RNA, such experiments were conducted by Leslie Orgel and his colleagues in California. They added to a test tube with RNA poison, ethylium bromide, inhibiting, or simply put, slowing down the synthesis of RNA. At first the rate of synthesis was slowed by the poison, but after about 9 test tube generations of evolution, natural selection produced a new strain of RNA that was resistant to the poison. By successfully doubling the doses of poison, a strain of RNA resistant to very high concentrations of it was bred. In total, 100 test tube generations changed in the experiment. Although in this experiment the RNA replicase was added to the solution by the experimenters themselves, Orgel found that RNA is also capable of spontaneous self-copying without the addition of the enzyme.
One essence split into many. One devoured another and became stronger.
In the modern world, there are no examples of one nucleic acid being absorbed by another. So, if we consider it purely scientifically, this phrase most likely refers to a more complex evolutionary model, a cell. And first of all, what was necessary for its formation was an outer membrane, since such systems must be spatially isolated. Otherwise, the more progressive system that emerged would not be able to use their advantages, since their more effective catalysts and other products would freely float away into the environment. Many molecules with charge groups, for example fatty acids, in an aqueous medium form microscopic bubbles, liposomes, and RNA molecules act as the stuffing for such protocells. Over time, as they develop, DNA molecules are synthesized in these protocells, which completely take on the function of storing genetic material, and organelles are formed, which also take on specialized functions to ensure metabolism. A full-fledged cell is created as an independent, autonomous organism. And already in this state, the process of absorbing foreign essence can be similar to phagocytosis, using the example of the same immune cells. As the cells continue to develop and divide through mitosis, a more complex multicellular organism was formed, the first Zerg. These creatures were already more reminiscent of the familiar worm-like larvae that can be seen in abundance at the hatcheries, and which, according to the manual for the first StarCraft, were discovered by the naga under Amon's leadership when they arrived in Zeros. The insectoids that emerged from the first spawning pool were the most primitive form of life on Zeros, but they had unique properties that were not typical of other members of the planet's fauna. These properties were precisely due to the catalytic reaction that occurred in the pool. The aggressive environment caused the formation of the ability for extreme adaptability at the gene level, as well as the intensive interaction of the Zerg genetic material with other species. Simply put, these creatures could mutate and evolve much faster than all other species, which ensured their rapid development. The Zerg's abilities were improved by the protogenesis of the naga, which accelerated their development many times over. For more effective interaction with the environment, the Zerg began to parasitically merge with other more developed representatives of the Zerus fauna. They easily subjugated the motor activity of their hosts and eventually took complete control over their nervous and mental activity. Being genetically aggressive creatures, the parasitic Zerg changed the genetic structure of their host organism under their influence. Thus, the mutating organism became one whole. It became a Zerg. You are probably asking yourself a very logical question. How did it happen that the Zerg, being the most evolved organism on Zerus, were at the same time the most primitive species on the planet at the time of Aemon's arrival? There are several versions on this account. As we know from the backstory of StarCraft, the Naga sowed the seeds of life on myriad planets throughout the universe. In what form this happened, we don't know. Either they filled these planets with peculiar building blocks for the formation of life, the same amino acids, or they created climatic conditions for their emergence, which is what I actually talk about at the beginning of the video, using the Miller-Urey experiment as an example. The first version is that the settlement of life on Zerus did not occur simultaneously, but in stages. That is, first during the cultivation of life, primary organism arose, which like our Earth organisms, evolved into more complex species. At the second stage, it is possibly that slightly different conditions were created, and at the same time resettlement of life occurred, but already using other types of amino acids and in isolated locations. In this way, the evolution of new species could have followed a completely different path, thereby ensuring the diversity of life forms on the planet. Due to such time intervals between settlements, a difference in the development of various species could have occurred, including the lack of the Zerg from other life forms on Zerus. The second version suggests that the Zerg biomaterial, not tissue but for example the same amino acids or nucleic acids, got to Zerus from space with the help of the same comets or asteroids. At the time of arrival, the planet could already have its own fauna, and naturally it would be more developed than the newly arrived molecular structures of the aliens. Well, the third version, as for me the most probable, is that the slowdown in development was caused by the nature of the Zerg, their excessive aggressiveness. Being isolated in the pool, primitive unicellular life forms were in constant struggle with each other. Reproduction by cell division was leveled by the rapid pace of their mutual absorption. Thus, for a fairly long period of time, all unicellular Zerg literally devoured each other, while life developed on the rest of Zerus, including land life. At some point, a moment came when all the organisms of the pool became identical in their genetic structure, and the genetic material absorbed during the struggle no longer produced any new properties or mutations. Evolution stopped. For further development, collaboration was needed. A unification of activities in order to overcome existing obstacles. Thus, the single-cell Zerg began to form colonies, the cell membranes between them thinned, and many cells became personified, depending on the functions they performed. The beginnings of organs and tissues appeared. Thus, a multicellular organism began to form. Further evolution allowed the Zerg to leave the pool. In the heart of the swarm, Abathur warns Kerrigan that the catalytic fluid of the first spawning pool can destroy her, since the Terran organism is not strong enough. This is due to the fact that the pool still contains the primary biomaterial of the Zerg, which, as we have figured out, is very aggressive even at the cellular level, and Kerrigan's body is nothing more than a sweet treat for it. And she survived, I believe, not because of some kind of hatred or rage, as we were shown in the game, but precisely because of her psionic abilities, her ability to interact with the Zerg at a deep level. In addition, Kerrigan was not completely purified by the keystone, and some Zerg mutagen still remained in her. Yes, this is a reference to the notorious dreadlocks.
Different. Examining genetic strands. You, infected with more Terran matter.
In this case, we can say that her Zerg essence was stronger, and she absorbed the essence of the pool. Natural selection. To sum it up, let's summarize what the first spawning pool is. It is nothing more than a natural pool, filled with catalytic liquid inhabited by microorganisms that formed the first Zerg long ago. We'll finish here. If you liked the video, as per tradition, I ask you to support it with a like and subscribe to the channel. See you soon. Bye everyone.